that is connected. And thanks, Tiziana, for organizing this meeting and sharing the screen, the presentation. So today's webinar is dedicated to a multifunctional approach to mountain farms, and it's within the Youth for Mountain series that Unimont is organizing. So first of all, who are we? We are a detachment of the University of Milan, localized in the Italian Central Alps. And we carry out research, teaching, and dissemination activities specifically connected to mountain areas and with an interdisciplinary approach. And we have been existing since 20 years. And we have here a bachelor's degree that is active. And in October, we will most likely have a master's degree dedicated to mountain area sustainable development. So of course, if any of you is interested, please contact us and we will share more information about us and what we do and how you can subscribe to basically our activities and to our degrees. So next slide. So this webinar comes from a Youth for Mountain process that we have begun a few months back. So basically the Youth for Mountains initiative began in September 2021, when we decided to involve youth coming from different mountain areas all around the world in a consultation in order to understand which priorities they do have on different topics and pressing issues related to mountain areas development and conservation, especially related to climate change. The manifesto was presented at Expo Dubai in 2021, but of course, the presentation of the manifesto followed a subscription process where we asked different entities and associations and research centers to subscribe the manifesto, and what the youth asked basically to policymakers and to research organizations and universities. The manifesto was presented then in Glasgow at the COP26 that took place in November, and then it was also presented at the Quirinale in Italy at the International Mountain Day in December. And now we decided to prolong the activities and carry out a few webinars. The overall aim is to present best cases in different sectors. Today's webinar is dedicated to agriculture. So we will explore a little bit how can the future challenges, the future and present challenges can be dealt with by medium and small size mountain farms, and how to promote entrepreneurship in mountain areas, especially with regards to youth. Then we will have a second webinar focusing on tourism, where we will share mountain regions examples of innovative and sustainable tourism. And then on the 3rd of May, we will focus on innovation, and we will present the role of technology and innovation to promote youth entrepreneurship. So now, today we will present three different cases. The first one is Ortotellinum from Valtellina, Italy. Then we will speak about the value chain of the Iberian ham with a presentation from Moving a Horizon project. And then in the end, we will have a presentation on the Mahila Woman Producers Company from India. Now I will pass on the floor to today's moderator, who is Professor Francesco Fava, who is an associated professor at the University of Milan and teaches also here at Unimont in our bachelor's degree. He has over 10 years of research and teaching experience in agroecology and remote sensing, especially focusing on mountain rural areas as well as arid environments. So as a rule, I ask you, of course, to keep your microphone closed unless you have to speak. At the end, we will have a question and answer session. And if you have any specific questions for the speakers, please feel free to write them in the chat so that we will read them to the speakers at the end of the session. So now we'll pass on the floor to Francesco, who will moderate today's meeting.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Stefano, for the introduction. I want to thank also the whole Mountain University team for inviting me to moderate this meeting. I must say that I'm very excited because, of course, the phones are ringing right now. Because my own research interest and career really has moved across the topic of multifunctionality of agricultural system, and especially in the marginal regions or so-called marginal regions of the world. And I've been learning from my research and also from my work in implementing development projects in different regions about the huge environmental and socioeconomic values of mountain and other systems, as well as but not only the value from a cultural and environmental perspective, but really the opportunity that it's possible to get from these environments. But for reaching, I mean, so the challenge we have is to really recognize these values and also to reverse this paradigm of marginality of this region. Actually, they are not at all marginal, but they have an immense value. And to do so, we need to pass through the marginality concept and sorry, the multifunctionality concept, and recognize the multifunctional role of agriculture. And so far, I mean, we have seen some example, but it has been difficult to really see how this idea could become practical business and development. Also because of the lack of instruments at institutional levels and incentives to help this to happen across the world or at a large scale. There might be some spot examples, but nothing really systemic. But I think we are now in a changing phase. I mean, there is ongoing transformation, and because if we look at the world context now, more and more institutions and the global agenda, in the global agenda, they are recognizing this role, and they are incentivizing the investment and entrepreneurship of young generation and women in this so-called marginal system. And so if we think of the new, the new policy, agricultural policies of the EU, with a Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy. But also if we think of the new investment of FAO, UN, and the World Bank across the developing world on this topic, we see that now there is a huge window of opportunity that for this region. So I'm very happy that we have now today 3 speakers from very different parts, from different parts of the world. From Italy, Spain, and from India, and from regions that are absolutely beautiful landscape, rich in biodiversity. They have an immense cultural value, and of course environmental value, broadly speaking. But let's say so, I mean, they are also regions that bring huge opportunities for new generation. And today I hope we will learn more about example of how to really start an activity and the business with multifunctional agriculture in mountain and more marginal environments. Let me start now by introducing the first speaker. As Stefano already mentioned, we will have the 3 speakers one after each other presenting. So in the meanwhile, please put your question in the chat so we can collect them and come back to the question during the discussion phase, which will happen afterwards. Let me start with the experience of Orto Tellinum and Alessandra Fendi, which will introduce and present the experience of Orto Tellino. So Orto Tellino was founded by Jonathan, which after graduation in natural sciences, and a long experience in the industrial viticulture, really decided to go back to his native place and open this new activities, Orto Tellino, with a different philosophy. Alessandra also, after bustling life, the channel life in the bustling city and frenetic city life, she has been traveling for a couple of years in Australia, so learning more about innovation and international context. And now she's back to support and to work in Orto Tellino, and today will present us her experience. So Alessandra, welcome, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. We are so happy to be here today. Okay. Okay, so we are, I was saying we are so happy to be here today. And we like to share something about our project, Orto Tellino. I decided to support myself and my English with a few slides as well and pictures. Okay.
Okay, Alessandra, we can't see your presentation.
Okay.
Now, yes.
Can you see the slide?
Yeah, the second one, but if you prefer, I can share it for you if your connection doesn't work.
Let me have a look. Okay, so as we told before, we are a tiny company located in Valtellina, which is a valley in the Alps area in north of Italy. What you can see in my picture is how the environment in our place look like. And we manage 1.5 hectares of old vineyard terraces and 1 hectare of cereal crops. Of all that, only 10% owned by us. Our production is about 30 quintals hectares of grapefruit, which become 4,000 to 5,000 bottles of natural wine. And the company income is mainly provided by selling them. Orto Tellino aims to regenerate old vines, Nebbiolo Ciuvinasca variety, which is a typical variety of Valtellina, and regenerate land, abandoned land, caretaker of biodiversity, and share knowledge, skills, and ideas. This is another view of our places. We have many ancient villages that, which unfortunately today, most of them are abandoned and almost destroyed, but they are very beautiful, and it seems to be like in another time. And one of that, it's the ancient village of Pila Boscarini, as you can see on the top on right, which is the place where we have our family traditional cellar, and where the winemaker, my brother, is creating his vision.
Alessandra, sorry, I think your slides are not moving. I don't know if.
So can I share your slide for you, maybe? So.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Thank you, Tiziana.
So.
If you can start from the one with 4 pictures.
Sure, wait. Just we were here, I guess.
Yeah, okay, some view of our landscape and environment. And then you can please go to the next. Okay, this is the picture where on the top on right we have our ancient village of Pila Boscarini. That is which is the place where we have our family traditional cellar. And then on the top on left you can see an example of the willow string that we use to tie up the vines after having after the pruning. And then below you can see on the left these steep steps, very typical in our terraces. And at the end on the right you can see an example of this Nebbiolo Ciuvinasca variety vine. That is the landrace that we are recovering and taking care about. And please, Tiziana, can you go to the next slide? Okay, our philosophy was born as a response to the next point. Use our time doing what we like. Provide to a dignified survival and adjust our needs to the environmental and cultural context we have, in our case, Italian mountain Alps. And this is how our do-it-yourself thinking became our business. We have been producing self-consumption wine since always in our family tradition. And my brother, Jonathan, thanks to a good mix of grandpa teaching and a couple of years work in industrial viticulture, eager for knowledge and experimentation, all supported by his naturalistic approach, developed the vision you can feel and taste today. Please, Tiziana, go to the next. Okay, this is our wine collection. The name you can read Serb, our wine name in our traditional dialect, means abundant land, like when you find only bones inside in the land and you can't work it anymore. So what we are doing is regenerate that kind of land in our landscape. So as we learn by the recent past, the mountain environment cannot support an intensive and extractive action. So we believe that the way is to create many micro-realities, focusing on quality and uniqueness in their products, message and lifestyle, as well as respect and cooperation with nature and people. Please, Tiziana, go to the next slide. Okay. So in Ortotelinum philosophy, we don't use any plastic in our vineyards. And when we found the old one, of course, we tried to keep them clean and pick them up. And as well, we don't use any chemical weeding in our work. And we are aware today that technology is the instrument which allows us to be known, also far away, of course. However, we have chosen to do not mechanize our job for a different reason. For example, preserve without transforming our landscape and heritage, move our body with the rhythm of the nature, and of course, to have less impact. Obviously, use our body means also hard work. So we decided to help our cereal farming task with a small old tractor and a mini harvester. Please, Tiziana, can you go to the next slide? Okay. The philosophy of community is applying also in shared tools and facilities. So what you can see in this picture is a few stuff are owned by us and few other are borrowed or share with friends and other small business like we are. We believe that more than ever it's important to awaken consciousness. Therefore, we love to share our knowledge in heroic viticulture and farming through periodic workshops. Please, Tiziana, go to the next. Okay, this is a few examples of the land races that we are taking care. And please go to the next. And a few examples of activities we have done and we are doing with kids, like plant a vegetable garden, and with any age people in our heroic viticulture workshops. So what we can say, young guys, be curious, creative, and unique. Take the time to observe outside and inside yourself and be a little good example. And we like to do a cheers with you, and also the winemaker, my brother, with our Zerb. Salute!
Thank you, Alessandra. Thank you, Jonathan. Nice to see also your face in the background. Very interesting presentation about how to really give a value to an incredibly nice landscape. I've been spending some time in Valtellina, and it's really a fascinating region. And it's very interesting how you turn it to a interesting and profitable business activity, which is also important. So is there any question, Tiziana, or anyone from the public? We have time for a very quick, like burning question on this specific presentation. Of course, we'll come back to a broader discussion later on.
No, at the moment we don't have any question in the chat. So
okay, don't be shy. Please keep posting question if you have, and if you feel like English is not your own language, just post it in Italian, and we will try to translate in the best way possible. So okay, let me then move to the next speaker. Is Carmen Mestre Diaz. She's a biologist specialized in the field of social sciences applied to the environment. And she really believes that transformative power of local community towards social, economic, and environmental sustainability can make a difference. So she will present about a project called Moving, which is the first research project, where she's really working to understand the linkage between the Iberian ham value chain and the sustainability of resilience of the region where it is produced. And she's doing her PhD there, also in relation with a specific focus on gender analysis of value chains in rural mountain areas. So Carmen, over to you. Welcome. I'm really excited to learn from your experience.
Thank you so much. Let me share my screen first. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes, please, if you can make it full screen, so it's better.
Can you see it? No? Okay.
Perfect.
First of all, I want to say thank you for Alessandra and Jonathan, her brother, for sharing their experience. It has been really nice to hearing from your inspiring experience, and thank you so much. Second, thank you, Francesco, for the presentation. As you have said, this is my first research job. I am 25, so I'm going to present now the work we are developing in Sierra Morena in Spain in the framework of Moving, which is an Horizon 2020 project coordinated by the University of Córdoba. That is where I'm working. And I'm going to present some information about the work we are doing here in Sierra Morena, in the dehesas of Sierra Morena. The first thing we have to answer is what is a dehesa, for the one that don't know what is that. A dehesa is a multifunctional silvo-agropastoral system, result of the coevolution between humans and Mediterranean forests. As you can see in the image, a dehesa is like composed by trees, which are all oaks, the Iberian pig breed, and the pastures and acorns that fall from the trees and the pastures that grow below the trees. The dehesas have been created over the centuries as a way of taking advantage of the conditions of this landscape, which are the poor soils that may not be useful for agriculture, and mild seasons. And also human being has been domesticated in the Mediterranean forest, the old holm oaks full of acorn in autumn, also the pasture growing below the trees, and the Iberian pig breed. These three elements constitute the main resources that give dehesas a profitability that contributes also to its conservation. And dehesas exist in the southwest part of the Iberian Peninsula, as you can see in the map in the image, including Spain and Portugal. We are working in Sierra Morena, which is in Andalusia region of Spain, in the south of Spain. And Sierra Morena is a mountain range, a little mountain range with smooth relief, where these practices of pig breeding has been existing through centuries. Iberian ham, the protected designation of origin, Los Pedroches, is one of the most valuable products from the dehesas productions in Sierra Morena. The Iberian ham has a lot of added value, going from the extensive farming, the acorn feeding, and also the assurance of the origin of production, but also all the sociocultural values and environmental values attached to it. As you can see in the image, the Iberian ham is the hind leg of the Iberian pig, and it has been submitted to a process of curing and salting that can last years until it is commercialized. But why have we chosen Iberian ham in the context of moving? Well, this value chain represents one of the key social practice and knowledge system needed for the long-term resilience and sustainability of this value chain of this region. Sorry. So the final high price it has and the profitability of the final product of this value chain plays a critical influencing role in the balance of the system. On one side, it can motivate farmers for a good practice, protecting all the production and all the traditional practices around it, but it also can motivate for the overexploitation and fraud of the production. There is also a strong embeddedness of the value chain in the territory. Lots of traditions and traditional know-hows and celebrations are linked to this landscape and its rhythms of production. And finally, the production of the Iberian ham have a consolidated structure of rule and regulations above that has lasted a lot of years. So there are some issues on the entrepreneurships in the dehesas of Sierra Morena. First of all, there is a great difficulty in the access to land. There is almost no land for sale. The property is almost always linked to the inheritance. You may take into account that dehesas are big extensions of land that can cost thousands of euros to invest of investment costs. So land renting is the most used way to access the dehesa. There is a lack of generational renewal due to the lack of opportunities. Young generation tend to migrate to urban areas. This is an issue shared by a lot of rural areas, at least in Spain. I guess it is in the most of the world. But there is also a loss of traditional knowledge linked to dehesas management and lacking the sector's professionalization. But it is interesting to focus on the profile of a young entrepreneur in the production stage of Iberian ham value chain. He is almost always a male. Fortunately, we have found women in the field, and they are around their 40s, and they are member of a family with a dehesa farm, so they have emotional boundaries with their family farm. They also have superior studies. This is a new thing in the value chain. They are agricultural engineers, vets, and they bring back new interesting approaches to production. That means innovations linked to applied research to increase the sustainability of the dehesas. And they have also more facility of communication with technicians and the administration. But they also face some problems when they start their installation. The first of them, it is a home oak tree root pathogen that is devastating the dehesas. They have to fight against that. They also face the climate change with a decrease in precipitations and increase in temperatures that influence the acorn availability. They have to make decisions over the management of the dehesa. There are many trends to overgrazing. There is also a trend to the population and the lack of generational renewal. They have also to make decisions about soil and pruning management, and also face bureaucracy in order to access the subsidies of the European Union, which are really important for their installation. But there are also some innovations that help them to overcome these type of obstacles. For example, there is a trend now to gastronomic tourism. Some farms and rural accommodation take advantage of the environment and offer ham tastings as a way of diversifying their economies. There is also, and there has been always, a cooperative character of the VC. Different professions around the VC, the value chain, like producers, processors, join their forces within some kind of interprofessional associations. And there is also a cooperative with a dedicated space for Iberian ham production in the region. And also the protected designation of origin, Los Pedroches, is a way of protection of the Iberian ham production and its context, which add social, environmental, and cultural and economical value to the final product. Finally, our role in moving in Sierra Morena is we are part of a consortium of 23 regions in mountain regions in Europe. And now in Sierra Morena, we are doing a deep and extended value chain analysis right now, which is helping us to understand the reality of the people working in the land. Our aim is to influence the creation of a network between stakeholders corresponding to science, policy, and society. We don't have to miss anybody in this analysis. And finally, we will have a list of policy recommendations for the next generation of European rural development policies in order to increase the resilience and sustainability of mountain areas. Thank you for your attention, and that's all. If you have any question, feel free.
Thank you very much, Carmen. Again, also like Alessandra, very good that you both speak perfectly with the timing, and that's nice. And also, I mean, this overview about the context I mean, the context of the Diaz system in Mediterranean regions is very, very important and interesting. We have similar system in Italy, in Sardinia, and it's an environment that really has a lot to share in terms of multifunctionality, cultural value, and so on. So really interesting. I don't know if there is any specific question in the chat. Before we have maybe time for one quick one, but I don't see.
Indeed, we have one question for Alessandra, but maybe we can ask her then.
Yeah, we can keep it for later then. And maybe then we can, okay, so we give time to the audience to think about questions and to write them down in English. Okay, so let me move to the next presentation. So the next speaker is Paul Callion from Umang Producer Company. So Paul is a co-founder of Pan-Himalayan Grassroots Development Foundation, which is involved with the initiation of holistic mountain development since 1992. So it's a long-term project and activity. The team at Grassroots has considerable experience in establishing market linkages through introduction of appropriate technology and value chains regarding establishment of small farmers' business. So over to you, Paul. I'm really interested to see your experience from a completely different context, Himalayan mountains, and what you have been learned from, a very long activity in the region.
Yeah, thank you all firstly for inviting me to participate in this series of workshops. So obviously, you know, I'm much older than everybody else over here. The two presenters are just in their 20s, as they said. They're really interesting presentations. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So my slides are going to be presented by Tiziana, I believe. You can have the first slide, please.
Yes.
Okay.
Can
so
you see
I represent. Yes, perfect. I can see it. So I represent the organization called Grassroots, and we promoted another producers company of the local women farmers called Umang. And we can have the next slide, please, just to show you where we are located. Can we have the next slide, please?
Yeah, I'm trying.
Okay.
But there is a little bit of Okay.
Okay, so that's the Himalayas, you must be familiar with, is the highest mountain chain in the world. Just like the Andes is the longest in South America. And so we are just in what's called the Central Himalayan region. And this is the village where we are located. This is the typical scene of the region where Umang is located and where all our work is. Now, as you know, we started our work more than 25 years ago, about 30 years ago. And we started with a holistic mountain development program, basically with the idea of providing basic services, firstly, in terms of water, energy for cooking, and sanitation, and all that it takes to improve the quality of life of people, and then create a situation whereby communities could begin micro enterprises which would enhance their incomes, which is typical of the last two presenters, what they mentioned, that produce some artisanal wine, produce some artisanal, ham production. So that's the kind of work which we've done over the last 15 years. So the idea is to start with a holistic mountain development program. I don't know if that's relevant to the areas in Europe, the Alps and elsewhere, but certainly in the Indian Himalayan region, you need to do that. But the potential to add local value to local farm produce is immense, just like what the last two presenters said. And setting up small processing units is perhaps an ideal way of ensuring the involvement of youth and thereby reduce the urge to migrate. But the status of the youth, if I can just take a minute right away, traditionally, there were no educational facilities available till almost the 70s, 1970s, till the end of 70s almost. And so typically the youth would try their best to enlist in the army, in the Indian Army, the defense services, or just simply migrate down to the urban sweatshops in terms of looking for job opportunities, like the lady mentioned just now in the Spanish area also. And because we wanted as a priority that the youth should be motivated to stay back, so we realized that you have to improve the quality of life. So what we did was, over a period of 10 years, we trained more than 500 local youth as barefoot engineers. And the barefoot engineers, what they did was they were involved with planning and implementing drinking water programs, renewable energy programs, etc., which directly improved the life of the communities. And so that was possible at that time. But now that educational facilities have been made available from the 80s. So we have the current generation of youth who've all gone through schooling, and many of them have gone through 3 years of even college graduation. And therefore their aspirations are completely different, the change makers in the generation next. So holistic development efforts now have led to the formation of a producers company called Umang, which encourages creation of local social capital, you see, which means through monthly small savings, people create their own little microcredit system. Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you. You got to move into the next slide, please. Yeah, this is also done. Yeah, I spoke about this. Please go to the next slide. Yeah. So this is where we are right now. No, sorry, just go to the last slide, please. Yeah. No, the earlier one, you moved ahead. You got to go back, please. Yeah, this is fine. So I was saying that we need to create the encouraging people to create their own social capital is very, very important, because it gives them the power, it empowers them with their own money, and they don't have to depend on banks and other traditional money lending systems. And that gives them the strength to create market linkages between the farm gates to the folks in urban zones, and some of, hey, please go back to the earlier slide. Yeah, just stay here, please. So what it means is that you need to define and operationalize value chains with introduction of appropriate post-harvest technologies in terms of aggregating the farm produce, then storing it properly, putting dehumidifiers, then processing technology, packaging, labeling, branding, etc. So you got to define this whole value chain to be able to reach from the farm gate to the urban area. Okay, please, next slide. Yeah, so some of the examples from Umang is that when we introduced a high value crop like the chamomile within the annual cycle of traditional farming system, and that brings in much more money than just growing traditional crops like millets, etc. And that's been a very, very good introduction. And it's, it's almost like the last example of the special ham, which this lady was talking about. Because unlike the other ham you get in the market, if this ham she's talking about is actually done in a cooperative manner by large number of small farmers and then branded and marketed, it'll add much more value to ham in the market than the regular conventional large big farms producing ham, Then we also, another example is we set up small fruit processing unit to add value to soft temperate fruits, because these fruits in the mountains like apricots, they spoil very quickly, because you're up at 6,000 feet. By the time you take it down to the plains where the markets are, the fruits spoil. So what we do is we aggregate it right there up in the hills and produce jams, jellies, and chutneys right there. And it's turned out to be extremely popular items with people. Then you also bring in some other appropriate technologies like vacuum packing machines, like say for the traditional walnuts, instead of just selling them as pure unshelled walnuts and thereby getting a price, say X per pound, you can shell it, you can vacuum pack it so that it adds greater shelf life, and you can reach more distant markets and thereby get, instead of X euros per pound of shelled walnuts, you may get X plus 5, And so you need appropriate technologies to add value to local produce is the point I'm trying to make. And similarly, you find that out of the traditional food basket of the farmers in the mountains, there'll be certain elements of it, certain crops, which are already under high demand in the market today. Like, in India, there's a big demand for sesame, the black sesame and the white sesame. And similarly for some of the other very, very unique millets, then amaranthus, then buckwheat, which grows in the mountains. So we encourage the farmers to grow more of these crops so that it can reach to more urban markets and fulfill those demand. Next slide, please. So the challenge for the future is to widen similar networks like Umang and the Youth for Mountains, and thereby provide wind to the idea of small is beautiful. I don't know if this generation of youngsters know about Schumacher, who wrote this famous book called Small is Beautiful in the 70s. It's the study of economics as if people mattered. So even the example of the wine making and the ham making is very, very small. But if you have 100 of these small flowers growing and you aggregate it, then you begin to enjoy the economies of scale, So each unit is small and therefore is beautiful, as she was trying to say, but it actually becomes a feasible business because you aggregate several of them together and then reach out to a larger market. Because it's only through a wider platform would mountain people of the world be able to create the critical economies of scale for artisanal products branded as safe mountain foods and loved and consumed by people across the world. To give you an example, you see in Switzerland in the last 10 years, now they've encouraged so many youth to start producing small quantities of artisanal cheese. And all these small cheese producers in the Italian mountains, we've gone and studied the situation. They've all been helped by the government of Switzerland with a certain branding so that the consumer knows that, hey, this cheese it comes out of a small farm in so-and-so area. So it's got a geographical location, and it also talks about how small the production scale is, that it's an artisanal product, and therefore it's different from an industrial product. So that's the kind of difference which we need to make. And I'm so glad to hear the first two examples talking of exactly that. It's the artisanal production of wine, not an industrial production. And it's the artisanal production of ham, and not the industrial, production of ham. So such strategies, if we can propagate and encourage across the mountains of the world, it will provide, we feel, ample opportunities to retain the youth within the mountains, and they can create a life for themselves and for the other mountain people. Thank you. Next slide, please. So the task is very, very clear, and the road ahead is not easy. It's tough. It's really tough what this lady is trying to do with her brother in producing their artisanal wine. It's really tough to produce the ham under the oak trees, which are already suffering from climate change and raised temperature. We know that because even in our mountains, the apple production has now moved up from 5,000 feet to 7,000 feet because of climate change. And in 5,000 feet where apples used to grow, now we have cut those trees off and we planted pomegranate trees, So it would be appropriate, we feel, to create alliances spanning the mountains of the world to provide a perspective to the youth regarding their role as custodians of the mountains, just as their parents and their grandparents have been. But obviously different from the previous generations, but yet a very challenging task which has to be understood by the next generation. The Youth for Mountains should not remain a mere slogan, but a way of life for millions of mountain youth. Next slide, please. So what I really wanted to say was that the experiences and examples of Umang and grassroots, we are in a position where we feel it ought to be shared with as many people as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul Kalyan, for this very interesting presentation. I think, we could really feel like, young generation are really the engine of the transformative change in agricultural system in mountain regions, but also how important is the experience and the value that this brings to this new generation to make this change happen. So thank you very much for your contribution. I think you raised some important points about the role of technological innovation, which I think it's also a component which shouldn't be necessarily seen as a way to go back to industrial agricultural concept, but it's a way that there are now technology that would allow to better use the agricultural resources and to optimize or better manage them. And so we need to use those opportunities. And also the role of incentives from governments and institutions to facilitate the work, which is so fundamental if we really want to have a more systemic change in mountain regions. I think I don't know if there are any specific question straight about this presentation, Tiziana. Otherwise, we can probably move to the broader discussion.
Yeah, I think we can move because we have another question, but for Carmen, so we have a little bit of delay. So.
That's perfectly fine. So maybe we can start with a question on chat. I see there is one for Alessandra and one for Carmen.
Yes. So Anna will ask to Alessandra about the land. So she wants to know if Alessandra rents the land, or if is there a possibility to take care of abandoned land?
Okay, thank you, Anna, for your question. So what happened here is that traditionally every family owns at least 1,500 meters square of land that in the past used to cultivate for crops, so vegetable garden, vineyard. And then what happened in our parents' generation didn't really care much about that, because most of them they went to the city, or they start to do some industrial and factory job. So what happened is that most of that vineyard went abandoned. So Jonathan started to go around and ask to every family if they like that someone take care for their land. And in most of the situation, people were very happy to give that land in managing to someone else. So now it's a kind of rent, but actually every year at the end of the year, my brother goes and visits this family and bring our product as a kind of gift. So it's more a barter philosophy than a renting philosophy. So yeah, that's how we are managing this land. It's more like a barter.
Thank you, Alessandra. I mean, this issue of land tenure seems to be quite important, and also Carmen mentioned this is one of the challenge or the important elements to be kept in mind. I don't know. I mean, maybe Carmen, if you want also to comment on more a bit more on this issue, because especially if there is something that is changing, or what you think it would be a way to address the challenge, well, with your experience in the ESA system, or more in general.
Well, I don't have much information about that, but what we have seen is that there is almost no land in sale. So people used to rent the ESAs to big owners of the ESAs, or families that has a lot of farms. So there is a problem in this sense, because all the properties tend to be as inheritance. And that's all I can say about that. We are now in the process of understanding a bit more the reality of the stakeholders linked to the ESAs. We are now in the process of doing more interviews to the farmers, so we can have more information in the forthcoming period about this thing, because I agree with you. It is a really important issue in the field. To the great investment cost it has to for a young farmer to install in the DESA system.
Thank you, Carmen. I don't know if Kalyan Paul, you have also experience for that part of the world you want to share about this challenge of land tenure or traditional inheritance systems, or
Yeah. You see, the way we've gone by it is that it's very, very tricky to get people to part with their land in a coalition, in an alliance and all that, because quite often many of the owners are not even there. They migrated down to the plains a generation ahead, before. And it's very gray, this whole area. So what we've done really is to create a cooperative in the community where the entire operation is done by different families, but is done together. So the processing facility is a common facility. Like say this, the winemaking example, with the first presenter talked about. Now, if there are only 1,500 square meters of land on an average, as she mentioned, for most of the farmers traditionally, that's like really tiny. That's really tiny. It's not even an acre. So if all of them have little vineyards, and if somebody like Jonathan, with his experience, creates a central cellar, a processing facility for wine, so you have a standard quality of production of the entire wine of that region, like the Champagne region, you develop a brand for this region. And so that's one way of getting out of it, we feel, is by actually forming a cooperative. So that, which means it brings me down to the question I've raised actually. We can address it later if you wish.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, maybe we can hear from Tiziana the other questions she mentioned, and then we continue this discussion. Thanks.
Yes, sure. We have a question for Carmen about the pathogen aggressive to the old oaks roots that she mentioned. So Eleonora Moro would ask what kind of pathogen is it, and if could be due to the feces of the black pigs. Thank you.
The pathogen is a fungus. It is a pest which is expanding through the roots of all oaks. I think of another trees also, but in our case, the disease that causes to the oaks is really important for the production of the Iberian ham. And it is like the spore of the fungus is in the soil until it can attack the small root of the tree, and then expand to the bigger ones. And when it reaches the bigger root of the old oaks, the old oaks die. It is like a devastating pest, and you have to take into account that a productive old oak has around 20 years. Until it has 20 years, it is not a productive tree. So the process of planting new trees in the ESA is a big issue, because you have to have a long-term vision as a farmer to see your trees dying, and then decide to plant new ones in a point that it is the production doesn't stop in the process of planting new trees. So it is a big issue, the Phytophthora cinnamomic, which is the scientific name of the fungus. And the other question, it is not due to the feces of the black pigs. It is in the soil as a spore until it can attack the roots.
I wanted to ask you, are these pigs wild? Are they wild pigs?
No, they are domestic pigs. They are
okay.
Yes, they are domestic.
Okay, just a special breed.
Yes, it is a special breed, Iberian pig breed, which has been bred in the territories for centuries.
Mm-hmm. What we've done with our oak trees, the problems is that we've raised small nurseries at the village, and where we plant 10,000 acorns in polypods, and they take 2 years to grow into a sapling. And then those saplings are given to farmers to plant out. But as you say, you need a vision and a plan to be able to help the farmers. Farmers can't do it on their own. Yeah. Thank you.
And there has also been a problem when the farmers buy some plants from outside the region. The plants come with the soil, and the soil comes with the spores. So yes, and absolutely. It is really difficult to stop the pest because of that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carmen. Tiziana, is there any other question already posted?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, so please don't be shy. I mean, we have the opportunity to have a nice discussion, and speakers can share a lot of their experience. please keep posting, and if you have if you want to directly make an intervention, just let us know so we can open the mic for you.
Hi, Francesco. Can I?
Oh, Anna, welcome. Welcome, please. Great to see you.
Yes, at least I arrived. I'm sorry I couldn't follow the entire seminar, but what I heard till now is really interesting. And I was interested in having some more information about the support provided by public institutions to the activity you presented. Is there any kind of support provided by public institutions to promote this kind of activities, youth entrepreneurship in mountain areas in your country? And if yes, which is the importance of this support? The importance of this support in the sustainability of the farming activity.
Okay, who wants to start? Maybe we follow the order of the presentation. Alessandra, do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, what's the role in Valtellina institutions in supporting your activity? How important it is? Is it there or not?
Yeah, because this is the point.
Okay, actually, what we are doing as Ortotellinum is more investing our time, body, and vision, because there's some help by some European support, but it's more about new implants of vineyards and not about regenerating and restoring our heritage. So, and because in our vision, we believe that the best way is to regenerate this world heritage that we already have. Instead, take them off to put something that is not worth as what we already have. So for that reason, we cannot being supported by any any help in that sense. So yeah, it's more about our time, our body, our skills, and it's more about awaken other people's consciousness in that sense. So if we are many small, many little, and everybody are sharing and collaborating in that, for us this is our mission. Instead, try to do something different from our vision and lifestyle as well. So unfortunately, we don't have any help in that sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's somehow surprising given the importance of or the potential of wine production in the region, and I mean the role of the landscape. So yeah, I mean, I'm wondering, Carmen, since we have, let's go in order, and is it somehow different in the Diaz context? Is there more sensitivity of local institutions? I mean, or you about supporting this type of innovations and activities? Or
so what we know about Diaz for the moment is that Diaz is facing a problem of recognizing of the institution. I mean, Diaz, as you have seen on the images, Diaz is a forest. Diaz has so many trees in them. They are all oaks which have big branches that cover a big surface of the soil, but it is also an agricultural system where pastures are grown. So for the institutions, the ESA is on one side a pasture and on the other side a forest. This means that for accessing the subsidies of the European Union and regional ones, farmers has to ascribe themselves as a pasture or as a forest, which means they earn the subsidies or for the forest or for the pasture. So it is a big issue in the DESA, as it is not recognized as a whole, as a system of pastures and forests. And for example, there has been some problems like the aerial images which are used for giving subsidies to farmers. In the aerial images, you can see like a big surface of forest, and you cannot see the pastures below. So subsidies are like gained for the forest part, not for the pastures. And this is a big issue for farmers in this sense. So the ESA has a lot of problems for being recognized as a whole system.
Yeah, this is a big issue, I think, about rangelands worldwide. I mean, they are often like oversimplified as like unique system without considering actually how diverse they are, even within the same grassland system. Of course, they are so diverse and they have different functions and roles, and this is not at all recognized. This happens everywhere, I think, in the world, but of course the DESA system and its complexity, it's kind of a big issue that I mean, there's not a clear identity from a policy point of view. So yeah, Kelly and Paul, do you want to add anything on this question, or do you have any comment from your side? You already mentioned this issue as well. I mean, the importance of government.
Yes, you see, it's a bit different because in India, as you know, our forests, we lost it because they were taken over during the colonial era when the British ruled India. And so they changed it from the natural resources being a custodian and support area for farming to a commercial outlook. And unfortunately, the same outlook continues even after independence, after 7 decades. And so the foresters are still trained to look upon forest as a mine to resource, you know, trees and sand, river sand, etc. And that creates a lot of problems for the native forests in the area. And the forest department of the government really own most part of the land. And that creates a lot of problem for fragile mountain ecosystems. But in terms specifically of your question, that whether of the lady's question, Anna's, that is there some government support for programs like what we are talking of today? It's a yes and no. It's primarily all these efforts in India, in the mountains and elsewhere, were all initiated by civil society. And then, you know, the whole challenge that civil society needs to impress upon the government to change policies. And so in one part of us, we feel very happy that governments, they were impressed with work of the civil society and they accepted those policies, change policies. But the sad part is in their hurry to scale up such programs, they have taken large amounts of loans and monies from international institutions like the World Bank and other governments, the bilateral aid agencies. And this has led to a plethora of programs now in the mountains, which are very short-sighted, because most of the programs which are sustainable, if you want to create a sustainable business in the mountains, it requires a long-term vision. That's a given. You cannot have a shortcut. As they say, that shortcut always draws blood. So we do have government programs, but unfortunately, they have a very, very short vision. And quite often they do more harm in creating abnormal markets just for temporary number of years, and they, it sort of doesn't help much. So the government has a long way to learn from examples like producer organizations like Umang and others. Yeah.
So my comment is that we share the same problems. Worldwide, we have the same problem. Mountains are not at the center of the attention of specific policies. And maybe we have to try to collaborate, to create alliances. I heard many times these terms, and I think is very important to create alliances in order to create awareness in the society. And maybe this is the right way to do for the future of mountains.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, that's an important point, and also I would say that you raised also the very important point of the way you invest. I agree that there's much more investment, at least from international donor world and the development banks in climate smart agriculture and development of mountain regions, drylands, and so on. But often they are like short term. They want results like in 3 years, and you have to show you transform. But we know that this is not the time for agricultural and social changes and innovation. The time is much longer, and this discrepancy make a lot of waste out of the resources that are available. So I think as part of this, it's important to connect, as Anna just said, and to have a global vision. And to create awareness, but also to sensitize, institutions, donors, and about the importance of long-term planning and how it is difficult to really make a difference or support an investment in the agricultural domain, especially in these areas, if you don't see a long-term or you don't allow a long-term work. So that's another very good point. And thanks, Anna. I don't know if you have any follow-up on this, but it was a very, very nice question from your side.
We are, as you know, we are working hard in order to try to promote this kind of approach at the European level, of course, and the Italian level. But it's not an easy task. And we have to try to enlarge the community, and these seminars are part of this vision, of course, and we hope the community will be in the future bigger and able to create a growing attention on these topics, on these issues. Because when we speak about sustainable development, we can't cope with mountain areas. And so I think is a central topic for sustainable development future. And so let's go on and work together. This is the hope we have.
Francesco, if I may just ask, Anna, have you heard of the Mountain Partnership, which is hosted by, yes. So the Italian government supports it to a large extent, and the Swiss government also. But I think the largest contributor to the whole program is the other Italians. And so that's one way we are trying to create an alliance with communities from the world of mountains. So a good beginning has been made, I think, with that Mountain Partnership, but we need to do a lot of more work on that.
Yeah, keep in touch, because we are working hard in this direction. For example, now we are working in order to launch at the end of this year a new master degree, an international master degree, dealing with the sustainable development of mountain areas. Because we think that another important point is to create opportunity for young people to acquire the right knowledge to cope with mountain areas, because mountain areas are specific territories with clear specificities. Verticality is the much more evident specificity, and you have to be aware about the specificities of these areas from a geomorphological point of view, but also from a cultural point of view, to impact really and to manage in a proper way these territories. And so we are working really hard in that direction. We believe it's possible, and the future can't forget the mountains. For the future of, okay. So keep in touch and stay tuned with Unimont. We are very active in promoting this kind of activities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So Tiziana, I see there is maybe one more question.
Yeah.
So we have 5 minutes, and it would be nice to see if we can answer.
Yeah, is another specific question for Carmen from Giuseppe Cillis. And he is asking if there are any form of tourist fruition in the DESA, for example, thematic paths or trekking, biking, or other form of slow tourism linking to this agro-silvopastoralism, and how farmers organize it.
Well, there are some initiatives right now. They are quite shy nowadays, but there are some forms of tourism like astronomic tourism. There is also astronomic tourism in the ESA. These territories are star-like reserve, so the quality of the sky is really nice. But the most used way now for doing tourists around the Iberian Ham value chain is the gastronomic one, of course. And there are some farms or some rural accommodations which are like offering customers another type of experience related to the ESA, also with the whole system. Not only with the taste of the Iberian ham, which is excellent and we all know it, but also with the experience of production of the ESAs, from the breeding of the Iberian pig until the tasting of the ham. And there is a line of marketing really related to the ESA system. When you buy a Iberian ham, you are buying as a customer all the experience of the ESA in the tasting of the ham. So yes, there are some initiatives, but now are like really few.
Thank you, Carmen. I think, well, I'm sad that we are going to wrap him up this meeting. I mean, it's interesting because the topic we had just started discussing is the one of the next seminar, so about the role of tourism. So just to mention that on the 24th of March there will be a next seminar of this series. And yeah, I think it would be nice to have you all of you on board. So yeah, I feel really inspired from today and reached. Thanks for sharing all your experience. And I have to be honest, I feel also very hungry after all this discussion about ham, wine. So maybe I need to go for an early lunch today. But yeah, let me thanks really all the speakers. Alessandra, Carmen, Paul Callian, it was really interesting and you have been perfectly on time. Thanks so much for your enthusiastic sharing of your activities. And also let me thanks very much the Mountain University team, Anna Giorgi, Stefano Sala, and overall also Tiziana, who really spent time to organize this workshop. And finally, let me thank also the audience which actively contribute to this discussion. So yeah, I think we are now out of our time, but I'm really excited to have the opportunity to join for the next seminars because today has been for me a very interesting and rich day. Please feel free to reach out to the Mountain University team or myself, and then we can reach out also to the speaker if you have further questions or curiosity. Yes, and I don't know, Tiziana or Anna, if you want to share a final word, but for me, we are good. Thank you very much.
Yes, I was sorry, my dog, but I wanted to thank all the speakers, and I hope we will keep in contact and go on in collaborating. Bye bye, and thank you very much.
Bye bye. Thank you.